Every firearm has a story, from its conception to the final product that you have in your hand, or wish to. My job is small in comparison to what others involved in the final version of a firearm have achieved in the labors of design, engineering, marketing, logistics, machining, assembly, quality control, quality assurance, distribution, and over-the-counter sales. My job is to simply present, as best I can, information about a firearm based on my observations and handling of the firearm in as short a time as possible, but covering what I think are the essentials of the firearm. If you are considering the purchase of the firearm that I am about to review, then you will know as much about it as I do. So, let me get started on the story of the AREX REXzero 1TC. I hope that you enjoy it. So what do you get when you bring home an AREX REXzero 1TC from the gun store, aside from a nice polymer carrying case? Well, opening the case reveals none other than the REXzero 1TC pistol in all its glory. Accompanying the pistol is one 15-round steel flush mount magazine and one 17-round magazine with extension, 4 optic adapter plates, a set of hex head mounting screws with red thread lock already applied, and 2 hex head wrenches for tightening and loosening said hex head screws. Additionally, you find a cable lock and a surprisingly well-written operator's manual. Inside the manual, you will find a couple of decals that you can place wherever. I'll be referring to the operator's manual throughout the review because it does have a wealth of information regarding the pistol. For now, let me present the basic specifications for the REXzero 1TC. The caliber is 9x19 mm. The overall length is 205 mm, or 8 inches. The height is 133 mm, or 5.2 inches. The overall width is 38 mm, or 1.49 inches. The barrel length is 116.5 millimeters, or 4.5 inches. The weight is 811 grams, or 28.6 ounces. With quick specifications out of the way, let me dig into the features of the pistol. The REXzero 1TC pistol is a double-action, single-action, short-recoil, hammer-fired pistol that uses a modified Browning linkless locking system. The TC in the pistol's designation means tactical compact. There are several variations of the REX that include Alpha, Delta, Delta Gen 2, 01 CP or compact pistol, 01S or standard, 01T or tactical, and this one, the 01TC. Features of this pistol are many, so I had better get started, and I'll begin with the frame. The frame is hard anodized aluminum and is available in black, FDE, as this one is, OD green, and smoke gray. The frame is well squared off at the forend, with a 3-point Picatinny rail for mounting lights, lasers, or combinations thereof. The frame then flows into a squared-off trigger guard that incorporates serrations and a bottom lip that helps hold the forefinger of the support hand, should you decide to use it for such. The bottom of the trigger guard flows into an undercut that then flows into a serrated front strap. I'll talk about the trigger a bit later. Located just above the front strap is an ambidextrous magazine catch and release button that can be pressed with the thumb of the shooting hand and also the forefinger. The magazine well has received a beveling treatment to make inserting the provided 15-round and 17-round magazines a tad easier to negotiate. Just to note, each magazine can be easily disassembled for maintenance. The back strap is serrated to provide the best grip possible, while the textured polymer grip panels provide a gripping surface where it is needed most, in the palm of the hand and the fingers as they are wrapped around the grip, and also to the palm of the support hand when taking a two-handed grip. The arch of the back strap is very satisfying to the hand. The back strap actually is flat and then rounds out near the bottom of the grip. The grip has a bit of a different feel to it if you are used to a rounded back strap. There are no grip adapters provided. What you grip is what you get. The grip handles are hard polymer, but are nicely textured and non-aggressive to the hand when gripped. The grip panels are molded so that the grip girth is rounded and should be very pleasing to those with medium-sized hands. If there was a comparison to be made, the grip length approximates that of the Glock G19, whereas the little finger of my shooting hand is positioned just above the bottom of the grip. Trigger pull distance in double action mode is right at 3 inches, while the single action trigger pull distance is about 2.5 inches. A nicely formed beaver tail keeps the hand away from the slide, and more importantly, the hammer, which is solid but formed to look like that of the now common roiled combat hammer type, and which has an ample serrated surface to use for cocking the pistol, if needed. There should be no issue with hammer bite, unless you have the hands of a gorilla. The grip width, length, and girth should accommodate most medium to large hand sizes. I'll talk about all of the safeties later, but I am going to introduce you to the safeties by presenting the two external safeties available on the frame, the ambidextrous thumb safety and the combination decocking slide lock and release safety. The ambidextrous thumb safety can be engaged in both double action and single action modes, and when engaged in the safe position, effectively disconnects the trigger. When the ambidextrous thumb safety is in the safe position, the hammer can be cocked regardless of operating mode, double or single. The REXzero 1TC can be safely carried in condition 1, cocked and locked. The thumb safety lever favors moving into the fire position more than moving into the safe position, as there is substantial material available to press the lever into the firing position, using either the thumb of the shooting hand or support hand without shifting the hand on the grip. Moving the safety lever to the safe position is a tad more difficult, as I found it impossible to do with the thumb of the shooting hand. I found it easy to rotate the pistol sideways while keeping my finger off of the trigger, and then moving the lever into the up safe position from the opposite side, using the forefinger of my support hand. The left side only decocking lever effectively lowers the hammer, if in the cocked position, without things going bang. If the thumb safety is in the safe position and the hammer cocked, pressing the decocking lever down drops the hammer to a safe point and the pistol remains in a safe condition. The trigger is disconnected if the thumb safety is on safe. If the thumb safety happens to be off safe, in the fire position, when the pistol is decocked, the pistol is placed in double action mode, which, with this pistol, is still a very safe mode to be in. Note that I never trust safeties. When activating or deactivating a safety, the muzzle is always pointed in a safe direction. When the decocking lever is pushed to decock the firearm, the hammer drops with authority and all at once, unlike the Sig Sauer platform, where I can control the descent of the hammer. When decocked, the hammer is resting against another safety that I will mention shortly. The decocker also serves as a slide lock and release lever. The slide lock functions when no magazine is present by pushing up on the lever while pulling or pushing the slide to the rear. Also, when the last round is fired, extracted, and ejected, the slide lock locks the slide back on the empty magazine. After a full magazine is inserted into the magwell, or if no magazine is inserted, the slide lock release lever is pushed down to allow the slide to go forward into battery. With no magazine inserted, the slide should be held firmly to prevent the slide from slamming in the battery on an empty chamber when the slide lock and release lever is pushed down. Note also that the pistol will fire with the magazine removed, as it has no magazine disconnect. The trigger pull weight in double action mode is long and heavy, but smooth throughout the trigger pull. Trigger pull weight in double action mode is 10 pounds 3.8 ounces. There is a slight amount of take-up until resistance is felt. The double action trigger pull seems to be non-stacking, and a staging point of sorts can be felt if you take the time and effort to feel out the sweet spot. There is very little, if any, over travel. The single action trigger pull is sweet, coming in at 1 pound 12.3 ounces with a 5-pull average. It does take some distance to initially get there, however. There is a short distance of free play until just a slight resistance is felt just before the wall. After that, 1 pound 12.3 ounces drops the hammer with no over travel. Trigger reset is about halfway through the single action trigger stroke. In other words, trigger reset is not that quick, but is tactile when it occurs. Just above the trigger guard is the assembly-disassembly lever. That is left side only. I'll talk about how to use that when we get into the maintenance segment. The last frame item is the serial number and importer information, which is the FIME group out of Las Vegas, Nevada, in this case, and is clearly marked on the right side of the frame. Of course, the frame houses the necessary fire control components, and we'll have a look-see at that a bit later. Alright, I have bounced around the frame quite a bit, so now let me get on with the upper, the slide, and things associated with it. The slide is of nitro-carburized steel with a graphite black color. The chamfered slide hosts a set of sights that will allow co-witnessing should the operator decide to run an optic. The sights are of the high-profile steel 3 white dot style. The front sight is as prominent as a shark's fin breaking the surface of the ocean, while the rear sight is abruptly cut at the front to accommodate racking the slide with a belt, table, whatever, should the need arise. Both front and rear sight is drift adjustable for windage, but that's it. Just in front of the rear sight is the ROR cover plate. ROR stands for REX Optics Ready. 4 additional plates are shipped with the pistol. According to the manufacturer, the ROR plates are stamped with the names of the manufacturers whose sights have been tested with the pistol. ROR plate adapters include one for the Trijicon RMR, a plate for the Seymour, RTS, STS, and Vortex Razor, one for the Shield, SMS, and RMS, and J-Point MRD, and an adapter plate for the Doctor Sight, Meopta Mio Sight, Vortex Viper Venom, EOTech and Insight MRDS, and Burist Fastfire. The slide is nicely serrated front and rear, and the serrations seem to be of adequate depth and cut to allow moving the slide to the rear for press checking, racking, or releasing the slide to chamber a cartridge. The front of the slide is indented, but seems more of a styling feature rather than functional, as it does not affect the overall width of the slide, but it does look good. Racking the slide. Now that could be troublesome to those with weak hand strength. The recoil spring tension is substantial. Even trying to slingshot the slide to chamber a round was difficult, but doable with a concentrated effort. Using the decocker slide lock and release lever to lower the slide also takes some doing. If there was a negative to the REXzero 1TC, The difficulty that I encountered when racking and releasing the slide would be it. Perhaps the more manly of you watching might not have an issue with it, but for me, I did. REXzero 1TC 9x19 is clearly marked on the left side of the slide, while the serial number and origin of the manufacturer is marked on the right side of the slide. Since I failed to mention it earlier, I will mention it now. AREX pistols are manufactured in Slovenia and imported into the USA. Slovenia, officially the Republic of Slovenia, is a country in southern Central Europe. Spread over 20,271 kilometers, it is bordered by Italy to the west, Austria to the north, Hungary to the northeast, Croatia to the southeast, and the Adriatic Sea to the southwest. As a little slide note, it seems that this area is a busy firearm manufacturing area, since we mostly know what comes out of Italy, Austria, Hungary, and Croatia. For example, can you say Beretta, Uberti, Pieta, Glock, Tokarev, and Springfield Armory's XD series for starters? Anyway, back to the REXzero 1TC. You will notice a small half-oval shaped indentation on the left front of the slide. I'll talk more about this when I disassemble the pistol. While I have presented two safeties, the ambidextrous thumb safety and the decocking function, there are a few more safety features yet to go. A firing pin safety. A slide-mounted firing pin safety helps to prevent accidental discharge from impact if the pistol is struck or dropped. A disconnector safety. The disconnector ensures that the pistol slide must be in battery to fire. A disassembly safety. The disassembly safety ensures that the slide is retracted fully to the rear to allow disassembly to take place. The disassembly lever is designed so that the cutout on the slide will only allow it to be rotated when the slide is in the rearmost position. A hammer safety standoff. The pistol incorporates a hammer safety standoff position. This feature is active when the trigger is pressed and holds the hammer away from the firing pin. When the pistol is fired, the hammer rebounds and is automatically held in a standoff position as the trigger is released, thus preventing it from contacting the firing pin. To put it bluntly, the REXzero 1TC is a very safe pistol that can be carried in three conditions: decocked, cocked and locked, and decocked and on safe. Well, that takes care of the features. Stay tuned, as maintenance, including safety check, disassembly, inspection, cleaning and lubrication, assembly, and function checking, is next. You will also find out more about the barrel, recoil spring and guide rod, and a look at overall machining and the fire control group. Performing maintenance, as always, begins with a safety check to ensure that the pistol is unloaded and safe to handle. Point the firearm in a safe direction. Remove the magazine. Note that there is no magazine disconnect. The pistol will fire with the magazine removed. Move the slide fully to the rear and lock it into place with the decocking slide lock and release lever. Fully inspect the chamber and magazine well to ensure that no live ammunition is present. With no live rounds in the pistol or in the general vicinity, let's start the teardown process. If the pistol is equipped with a muzzle cap, as this one is, or if you have a muzzle device mounted, you may want to remove it. You will not be able to remove the barrel otherwise. With the slide locked to the rear, rotate the disassembly lever clockwise and down until it is vertical. You may want to pull the slide further to the rear just a tad to relieve the pressure on the disassembly lever. Once the disassembly lever is in the vertical position, slowly release the slide until all tension is removed. Then separate the slide and frame assemblies. Note that the recoil spring and guide rod are not captive, and the recoil spring is under considerable spring tension. Compress the guide rod and recoil spring forward, while carefully lifting the guide rod and recoil spring up and out of the slide from the rear. Lift the barrel up from the rear and remove it from the slide. This is as far as you need to go for routine maintenance. To clean the pistol, I am simply going to refer you to the operator's manual, as it contains all of the information necessary to ensure that the pistol is properly cleaned, to include the barrel, slide, frame, and magazines. The pistol should always be inspected for any irregularities that may cause problems. I have listed inspection points to consider. Damaged or missing parts. Absence of free movement where movement is expected. Absence of spring tension where spring tension is expected. Unexpected tolerances, movement, or looseness. Parts exhibiting signs of cracks, dents, or obvious signs of damage or stress. The lack of stops or tactile clicks where expected. Presence of corrosion or degradation of surfaces. Looking at the slide and frame assemblies closer, you can see that the machining on both is excellent, with nary a tool mark visible. Note the long rail section of both the slide and the frame, which adds to the proper operation and inherent accuracy of the pistol. As mentioned, the recoil spring and guide rod are not captive, and care should be taken when removing and installing the guide rod and recoil spring. Also note that if you forget what caliber of cartridge you are shooting, it is marked on the right side of the barrel's chamber. Proper lubrication is tantamount to proper operation, and again, I will steer you in the direction of the operator's manual. That provides all the necessary information for properly lubricating the pistol. There are essentially 3 levels of lubrication: no lubrication, light lubrication, and medium lubrication. No heavy lubrication is required. I think that it's time to put the REXzero 1TC back together, and then perform a function check. Assembling the pistol is straightforward. However, I found that installing the recoil spring and guide rod a bit tricky because of tight tolerances. I'll tell you about a trick that makes installing the recoil spring and guide rod a bit easier, at least on this pistol. The normal way of installing the slide components is to install the barrel first and then install the recoil spring and guide rod. With the barrel installed first, however, lining up the guide rod to the opening in the front of the slide can be difficult. I found that the following method worked best, but care must be taken, as the recoil spring will be under extreme spring tension. Insert the recoil spring into the guide rod housing at the bottom of the slide. Press the guide rod inward to get it started into the guide rod opening at the front of the slide. With the thumb, and while supporting the slide, push the guide rod about halfway into the opening. With the other hand, insert the barrel, muzzle in first, under the guide rod and recoil spring. Slowly insert the barrel while pushing the guide rod forward until the barrel drops into place and the chamber is locked into place. Slowly remove pressure on the guide rod, lining up the base of the guide rod into its resting place in the barrel as you do so. Do a final check to ensure that the guide rod is centered within the barrel. Assemble the slide and frame assemblies. Push the slide to the rear and lock it into place with the decocking slide lock and release lever. The disassembly lever will snap back into the horizontal position, effectively locking the slide into place. If the disassembly lever does not snap back into place, simply move the slide a tad further to the rear until it does. Hold the slide and frame firmly while moving the slide slightly to the rear, then slowly allow the slide to move forward until it is in battery. If the decocking slide lock and release lever was engaged with the slide, it will disengage when the slide is moved fully to the rear. Install the muzzle cap or muzzle device as needed. That's it. Now it's time for a function check. I like using snap caps when checking function, but I leave their use up to you. By using snap caps, I protect the firing pin from damage, and I can check extraction, ejection, and that the slide locks back on an empty magazine. First up is to check the slide action. With all fingers outside of the trigger guard and with no magazine inserted, rack the slide completely several times to ensure that it moves smoothly back and forth. The hammer will be cocked at this point. Lock the slide back with the decocking slide lock and release lever. Insert a magazine loaded with several snap caps and release the slide to chamber the first snap cap. To check single action operation, first ensure that the thumb safety is in the down fire position. Press and hold the trigger. The hammer should fall and then rebound away from the firing pin. Keeping the trigger fully pressed, push on the hammer. The hammer should move forward and touch the firing pin. To check disconnector operation, press and hold the trigger while racking the slide fully to the rear and then slowly allow it to go into battery. If a snap cap was chambered, it should be extracted and ejected, and if a second snap cap was installed, it should chamber. Note that racking the slide might be difficult should you have weak hand strength. Slowly release the trigger. The trigger should reset with an audible and tactile click after moving forward about 4 mm, and the hammer should remain in the cocked position. If you are using snap caps, remove the snap cap loaded magazine and install an empty magazine into the magazine well. Rack the slide to the rear. The slide should lock open and a snap cap, if chambered, will be extracted and ejected, either with the magazine still installed or with the magazine removed. Press the slide catch and release lever down while firmly holding the slide. The slide should release. Slowly allow the slide to go forward into battery. Remove the empty magazine and replace it with a snap cap installed magazine. Rack the slide to chamber the snap cap. To check manual safety operation, push the safety lever up into the safe position. Press the trigger. The trigger should move freely, and the hammer should remain in the cocked position. To check decocking lever operation, push down on the decocking slide lock and release lever. The hammer should fall with the thumb safety on safe, but stop before touching the firing pin, and should remain in the safety standoff position even if pushed from the rear. To check manual safety operation from a decocked condition, press the thumb safety to the down fire position. Push the safety lever back to the up safe position. The trigger should move freely and the hammer should remain lowered. Finally, check the double action trigger operation. Move the thumb safety to the down fire position. Press and hold the trigger. The hammer should cock and fall, rebounding away from the firing pin slightly. Release the trigger. The trigger should return to its full forward position when released. Cycle the slide several times. Each snap cap, if used, should be extracted and ejected. The slide should lock back on an empty magazine. This completes the function check. Now it's time to see what the REXzero 1TC can do at the range and by hands. I really did not know what to expect from the REXzero 1TC, as this would be the first time that we had an intimate experience at the range together. While static first impressions are important, more important are dynamic first impressions, and only range time will tell that story. Getting used to suppressor height sights boggled the brain for a short bit, but I managed to work that out. The transition between double action and single action also had to be worked out, although I am familiar with operating DASA pistols. Each has its own characteristics, however. This day's ammunition fodder was Magtech 115 grain FMJ and Remington 124 grain FMJ, with a sprinkling of Sig Sauer 124 grain V-Crown JHP for possible defensive load carry. So, I'll quit babbling and get to shooting. Let's see what kind of partnership I can form with the REXzero 1 Tactical Compact. With the short time that I have spent with the REXzero 1TC, I think that I can form an opinion regarding it. And I'm going to get on with that right now. In some ways, the REXzero 1TC reminds me of the Sig Sauer P229 Legion Compact, but smaller in all dimensions except the barrel length, which given the muzzle cap is longer. And that the REXzero 1TC has a greater capacity with a 17-round magazine with extension. At a current MSRP of $869, price is a far cry from what I would call inexpensive, but you do get a lot of pistol for the money. With the Sig Sauer P229 Legion Compact MSRP floating around the $1,400 mark without optic, the REXzero 1TC may be a good alternative choice if this type of firearm interests you. For me, and if an AREX pistol was to be added to the collection, the REXzero 1CP, a version without a threaded barrel and optic mounting, would suit my fancy and needs, but that's just me. The quality seems to be there, as does reliability and accuracy. I don't have any negatives to mention, aside from the fact that it has an accessory rail, and I don't care for rails. But it would not be a tactical compact without the accessory rail, now would it? The difficulty that I had with racking the slide due to the heavy recoil spring could be perceived as a negative by some, with weak hand strength. With that said, I have worked with pistols that were easy to rack and those that were more difficult to rack. The REXzero 1TC is kind of in between those. Being of metal foundation, the weight, as compared to polymer pistols, may be an advantage or disadvantage, depending on how you look at things. While being of a compact nature, it is not all that small. Holsters for the REXzero 1TC, however, can be found at Alien Gear, Craft, Urban Carry, Fime Group, and Hogue. The REXzero 1TC, according to the manufacturer, complies with strict military standards for reliability and has passed extreme temperature, hostile environment, and drop test. It has a limited lifetime warranty for the original commercial and civilian purchaser, and 1 year for law enforcement and military customers. With an optic installed, and possibly with a light, laser, or a combination of both hanging off the front end, this just might make for a fine little pistol for home or self-defense. The REXzero 1TC seems to have everything that one would need. Before I close things out, I would like to mention that service life expectancy is up to 30,000 rounds. Well, my friends, it's time to close yet another chapter in the Range Ronin Chronicles. But before I let you go, I would like to thank my son-in-law for letting me borrow the REXzero 1TC for this review. I would also like to thank you for sticking with me during this story. That means a lot to me and helps me keep this channel growing. Before you get back to what you need to do, take a last look at the REXzero 1TC, and until we meet again for another review, stay safe out there